let me talk about the real foundational happiness. When I run my workshops, I ask people, who are some of the happiest people in the world? And I get answers sometimes like people who meditate or Buddha. Some people would say, I think my father is the happiest person. But in the end, we all come to the same conclusion. Most people would say that children are the happiest group of people in the world. As long as they are being fed well, taken care of by their family, they are genuinely happy because they have no worries yet about who they could be. They are playful. They don't have to worry yet about anything in the external world. They don't have any limitation yet about who they can be. And they were what I call a total monk. When you were a child, you were aligned with your purpose. You were aligned with your values. You were aligned with your intuition. You were aligned with your true source of happiness. You were playful and you were free of worry. You didn't have any doubts yet or fears yet about who you could be. And that's how you were born. And you followed your heart in everything that you did with a lot of playing, with a lot of joy, with a lot of laughter. And then what happens? When you grow a little bit older, around the age of 2 to 5 years old, in psychology, they call it you develop a sense of self. And this sense of self is your identity. It is your ego and it's also your mind. And this starts typically with identifying this is mommy and this is daddy. My name is David, or my name is Katie, or my name is Michael. And then in the family that you grew up in, you create a culture and the beliefs about who you are and how you see the world. You learn to create this identity in the country that you live in and the family that you grew up in when you were a child. And then what happens is that you wanted to be loved as a child and accepted, and you wanted to be approved by your parents. So what did you do? You started to make decisions based on your parents' expectations, based on their desires, and based on their wishes. Here is the key. The moment that when you were a child, you made a decision in your life, and that decision was not in line with yourself, there was a really small gap created inside of you between who you pretended to be on the outside and who you really were on the inside. And this gap created a disconnect and made you feel pain emotionally. But you made these decisions because you wanted to be loved, you wanted to be accepted, and you wanted to be approved at a young age. Maybe you recall a decision in your childhood where you made decisions based on the expectations of your parents. And sometimes it happens in a very innocent way because your parents want the best for you. But sometimes they also do it more in a forced way, that you have to behave in a certain way. Because of this gap, you create negative emotions because you don't like it. You create frustration, you create unhappiness, and because you don't want to feel that gap, you don't want to feel these negative emotions, then what do? Well, you start to make more decisions based on the expectations of your parents in order to be loved and to be approved and accepted. And this is basically the starting point of the beginning of the gap within yourself. And that is typically the part that you don't remember. That this is the part where you started to create these negative emotions from a very early young age. For example, as you grow a little bit older, you try to get good grades in school because you want to be approved, you want your parents to be happy. You try to be really good at sports because maybe your father or your mother is pushing you to become the best at sport. And you want to be a good child because otherwise maybe you would get punished and you would feel shame. Then slowly over time, very gently, this gap keeps growing and you lose actually that connection with your true self. You lose that playfulness with your inner monk. You lose that connection with the monk. And later on, instead of living up to the expectations of your parents, it becomes the expectation and approval of your teachers in school. It becomes the expectations of your friends, of your peer society, your boss, your career, and later on, external world in social media. You start to look into the external world for a sense of approval, for a sense of recognition, for a sense to be loved and to be accepted by those around you, because you don't want to feel these negative emotions and you want to have a sense of part and belonging into the world. And so this gap slowly starts growing larger and larger. You wanted to be included, you want to be seen, and maybe you've decided that choosing a career that your parents wanted you to have, that would make you feel loved and accepted, but maybe that's not what you really wanted. Maybe you studied something that you didn't really want to study. When you are not happy, you start to focus on the external world. You start searching on social media, check people's profile, seeing that external projections of happiness and success, whether it's fake or real. And then you get these dopamine hits. You get all of these chemicals inside the body in order to cover up the real happiness, to be really happy. And I'm sure in your life, no one has ever taught you this, how you created that gap in your life. Actually, very few people know they have a gap or how to bridge it. You never seem to be able to find the answer. And that's because the root cause has never been taught in school or by our parents, or there was never any real role model teaching this when you grow up. And you see some temporary path to happiness through, getting a better job title, get a nicer car, make more money, have a bigger house, or maybe have a new relationship. No matter how much of these external things you do, you never seem to be able to find the right answer, right? And then your gap slowly grows larger and larger, and this gap has an incredible impact on your personal life and your effectiveness also in your career. And then you try to cope with the daily demands and the expectations of other people, and the gap keeps increasing. And then at some point, some people start to develop addictions in life because they cannot cope with the stress anymore. I had a coaching client, David, and he was very successful in business, but he was drinking a lot of alcohol during the week and also during the weekend to cover up his unhappiness. And the addiction comes basically from an attempt to self-soothe a dysregulated nervous system within your body. Some people would use it through shopping, through gambling, arguing with someone. They are all used to numb up the emotions and to suppress the suffering. I've seen people with alcohol abuse, overworking, and spending longer time at the office, sexual affairs, and anything done to the extreme can be a numbing extraction. And then people, they want to stay in control. They don't want to change because the ego, of course, grows larger and larger. Have you ever tried to talk to a person and try to help them emotionally and they don't want to change? It's because they are suffering deeply and they're very attached to their ego and they don't want to let go of control. And so they suffer more. That's the point when you get that wake-up call in life, when that gap grows much bigger. My previous business partner in China, when he was working in corporate, he was in charge of restructuring companies. And then when he was in the hospital, he realized, look, my whole life I've been restructuring companies and I've been laying off people. I need to fire people and give people bad news. And it's like, this is not what my life is supposed to be. Even that wake-up call, that crisis allowed him to give him an opportunity to start walking a different path in life. Some people, they suffer from the burnout, and that suddenly makes you realize that you have not been living a life true to yourself. When the pain of disconnecting from your monk becomes too great. And that's why sometimes you see successful people even being depressed. All this happens to avoid more and more negative emotions, and people feel trapped, they feel depressed, and they don't know how to get out of the situation. Now, I want you to know that this is all not your fault, because you never had a real mechanism or a tool or an awareness to bridge that gap. And maybe you had this wake-up call in your life as well. And maybe your gap is not as extreme to go to the suicide. Maybe your gap is a lot smaller. But every human being has a gap to a certain extent in his or her life. It is like wearing a backpack on your back, and every time that you make an action or a decision in which you are not true to yourself, you add a small stone to the backpack because you live up to the expectations of others. And sometimes you're only adding one or two small stones, but sometimes you're adding bigger stones to the backpack and your backpack becomes heavier, especially with emotional traumas. A backpack can become very heavy. The most important thing in your life is the power of your decision making. Because every time that you make a decision not in line with your monk, not in line with your values, not in line with your purpose, what happens? You create this gap. The more times you add more stones and rocks to the backpack, the more emotional traumas or negative experiences that you have that you don't release, the bigger the backpack becomes, and the more you suffer and the more you feel depressed, and that's also the more you feel lonely. And then often you have a certain degree of success in life. You have many years of working, maybe you're in the golden cage, but you accumulate all these negative emotions, and then you start wondering, is this all there is? Everybody seems to be happening and I'm alone on this journey not being happy. And it's not true. A lot of people on this journey, they're just not aware that they have this gap. This is the point that many people arrive. You have leaders in companies, you have managers, you have entrepreneurs, you have employees, even doctors, fathers and mothers, politicians. They have no solution to empty that backpack. How many people, if you reflect on it, do you think you know right now who have a gap in life, who have created that gap? How many people do you think feel depressed? How many people struggle in their relationships? How many people struggle in their career? All because of the gap. The gap affects all areas of your life. So it's really important for you to understand how big the gap is in your life. Because the size of the gap will determine everything. Your real level of success, your real level of happiness and fulfillment and effectiveness in your life and career. If you want to make real changes, you first must know where you are on the journey. So I created this tool together with Dr. Mike Thompson. It is a questionnaire that will help you assess the size of your gap. This questionnaire was created after interviewing and analyzing the responses of nearly 200 CEOs worldwide about life and leadership effectiveness. So go ahead and take the free questionnaire right now. You'll receive a detailed report in your email with the strategies on how to bridge the gap in your life and career, as well as another bonus free gift, which is a free 9-part email mini course that will further help you to bridge the gap in your life and career so that you can transition towards a happier and more fulfilling life. So go ahead and take the questionnaire right now, and I'll see you on the inside.